Here we are back again having a conversation on the Paul and Paul show. We've got Paul Sparks all the way from Tacoma, just south of the fine city of Seattle, that's renowned for making the second best coffee in the world. The best, of course, is here in Melbourne. We've also got Philip Quah and Jay Sawyer from the teams here at Church of Christ in Victoria and Tasmania. I'd like to just drop a subtle and simple theme before us as we talk a little bit more about leadership. The themes, the practices, the modes of operating and speaking that are afforded by the apostolic, the prophetic, the evangelistic, the pastor-teacher modes that are outlined in Ephesians 4 are still practices and modes of operating that could well be helpful to the people of God. But what might they look like in the context of a neighbourhood and in an incarnational mission in a neighbourhood?
Yeah. If I could say, what we've been talking about, Paul Sparks, about church being in the neighbourhood, it's like an old thing, but it's actually new thing. And to have a new thing and to perpetuate it and to grow it, to even multiply it across communities, I think firstly you start with what's apostolic, someone who grab hold of that vision and continue to create that space and protect that space or recreate that space. I would think that's a bit of a apostle kind of work. Would you say so?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most meaningful things that I draw out of some of that language is how critical diversity of leadership really is, and that it's if you get one frame, this is the only type of leader that we need. You miss so much of what's possible in the neighborhood, and at those primary stages, you absolutely need someone who is their imagination is capable of taking that kind of ground and really really being apostolic, as you say. So I think I feel like it's a huge advantage in the neighborhood if you can start thinking people who are different than I am is what I'm looking for when I look for partners, leadership teams, etc. And also people from other traditions are meaningful partners in ministry in the parish. I mean, what a wonderful idea that the diversity actually gives us a more powerful potential in our unity.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Phil.
Yeah. And the prophetic nature of it, I guess this is a loaded word and depends what you think a prophet is. But I think someone who is able to say and reflect, I think that's a wrong thing. Someone's strong sense of justice and say, well, I know it may not make sense. It will cause us all to go into a different direction or detour a little bit, but that's important enough. So that voice within that community, I reckon it's a prophetic voice. And I think that voice will actually give character to that parish.
That's the one leader that we really don't want.
We don't want that
in the leadership team.
We don't want to be either.
Yeah. When you're trying to get some momentum in the neighborhood and you're trying to grow as a group, the last leader you're looking for is the one who will actually say, "Hey, this is a narrative we don't need to live into," and yet it's so key, so key. Yeah, I would agree.
I think one of the challenges of what is sometimes rather warmly called the fivefold ministries of Ephesians 4 is a sense that that's an exhaustive list. That's the only list, and that it's a prescriptive list. And I think picking up your point earlier, Paul, and playing into also what Philip was saying, the beauty and the wonder of diversity and the harmony of several voices, and beyond even these five, different voices that can come from a slightly different angle as they are in tune with God and are discerning his way for this community of people in this neighbourhood. It might look like some of those things, and it might be able to be branded some of those things, but sometimes it might look a little different than those things, but with the same goal of releasing God's people as an order of local missionaries in that neighbourhood.
Yeah, those words can be very loaded with a very clearly defined definition. I was just thinking about the people that are listening to this podcast. You'd probably have some people going, yes, we need to redeem those words. And some people may be saying, we've got to find the evangelist, and we've got to find the prophet, and we've got to start redeeming those words, and it's clearly defined by what that looks like. And there's probably other people who listen to this podcast going, I actually don't know what you're talking about. I actually don't know what you're talking about when you say apostle. And I don't even know how to practice that, but they may be potentially doing it themselves. And maybe it's actually identifying the fact that they are already doing it, but it looks different. It's not this clear-cut sort of model or package.
A key aspect of the mutuality of leadership is discerning in the other, the gifting, the capacity that they bring to the overall conversation. And whatever we call that, and whoever we call the people that we discern those gifts or giftings in, we maybe need a little more flexibility, but that it's a helpful starting point for a conversation. The difficulty is that too often we can make some of these pieces the ending point of a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little grenade launched in here, but and there are many of my own mentors who are much wiser than me who will give me reflections on this post suggesting it. But one of the things that I find a bit frustrating around kind of setting the fivefold up as kind of the archetype that we're all to enter into is I feel like it sets up these kind of ministry roles. These are the things that all of the lay people are striving for, and there's perhaps a leadership team that has kind of arrived at these and are dominant in these different five roles, and everyone else is trying to find their way as either a prophet, a teacher, and an apostle, etc. And so sometimes the categories, if they're too static, I think they become kind of predominant markers, and then you get people in the neighborhood who say, I've never really wanted to be a prophet, or never really wanted to be an evangelist per se, but now these are set up as the things that I'm supposed to strive to.
That's my experience. I mean, I've sat in meetings down in Keysborough where someone would say something, and it would be considered a prophetic voice. But to actually label that as a prophetic voice, or to tell them that they're a prophet, it wouldn't actually be overly helpful for them. I grew up at a large church, and I was the one bringing in the kids from the local school. And these kids would light up their cigarettes their lighters during the worship and wave it around. I was the one. 10 kids would follow me into church, and I was known as the local evangelist. And I had people say to me, "You're the evangelist at this church." Now I just couldn't carry that load. I just to carry this expectation that I was an evangelist, I really struggled. Now that's probably a reflection on my personality, what I can carry, but I really struggle with being labelled with that.
And the other thing that I struggle a little bit with, I'm happy for these voices in a whole range of different ways to be expressed and to be made manifest in all kinds of creative ways, but to see them as aspirational, I think puts, and something we've got to strive to, actually puts the emphasis in the wrong place, because actually, the text is clear. God gives gifts, and that's repeated not just here, but in Ephesians 4, but in a number of places. And so, my desire is just to get close to God and to listen to God, and to see how He uses me and uses others in the conversation, rather than feeling, well, I'm only down here on the ladder, and if I just do a few more things, and all of a sudden do a few more things makes it sound a little bit not like what we're called to be. And so there's some work that needs to be done there. Again, I think it's helpful just to leave this conversation where it is, because our whole idea of these podcasts is to create conversations, is to, if you like, ferment discussion around themes that we think are important for us as a movement at this particular point in time. So Philip, Jay and Paul, thanks so much for the conversation that we've had. We look forward to hearing from others the conversations that they're having.